issues, but I'll kick things off. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Sean de Bruin. I'm the CEO of the Tourism Industry Council. It's great to have you joining us this morning for In Conversation to have a discussion with Paul Brown, who's now taken on a new role as a Business Counsellor for rural business support. Before I hand over to Paul, I just want to let you know we are recording this session, and so we'll post this online. So please feel free to remain on mute. Once we get into the conversational part of the session, due to the fact that we have a small group, I'd be more than happy for people to come off mute and make comments or ask questions. And please feel free to have your camera on or off, whichever you would prefer. I'd just also like to acknowledge that from TIC SA office that we do this a video conference call In Conversation on the land of the Kaurna people, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and respect their connection to country. The purpose of today's session is a few elements. Firstly, it's about recognising the fact that many tourism businesses are going through very challenging times. That's undeniable. That what we're seeing here in the TIC SA office is this is the toughest time our industry has ever seen. Now, there are different business stories out there. Some businesses are going okay. Some are quiet but happy for a rest because they've been going very hard, and winter's normally a quieter period for them. And then there's many that are doing it incredibly tough and facing financial challenges. So we're keen to talk a little bit more about that, and Paul will be able to talk to his personal experience. But we also know that there's going to be good days ahead, and that tourism, we're a positive industry, and there are good days ahead, albeit that we are in the most challenging circumstances our industry is seeing. Well, then Paul will be able to talk then a bit about his current role and what he does as a business counsellor, and specifically he focuses on a couple of patches around the state, but obviously there's support across the state for businesses that might be located outside of his geographical area of operations. And then we're keen to hear the stories, and if people want to share their experience, more than pleased to have those inputs as well throughout the session. So we'll have some questions and answer or some comments at the end of the session as well, and we plan to keep this session punchy, so it'll be done and dusted by approximately 11:30. So in moving forward now, I would like to bring Paul Brown into the conversation. Paul, it's great to have you with us here today. We're really grateful for your expertise, but also your preparedness to share your story on what ironically is Are You OK Day today. Not that we planned it that way, it's just the way it ended up falling. Obviously there's a huge financial challenge that business people are facing across the country, but there's also an absolute well-being and mental health cost that's being experienced by so many as well at the moment. Maybe Paul, rather than me try and provide an introduction in terms of your background, are you happy to just give us 1 or 2 minutes on your background and your work history?
Yeah, thanks, Sean, and thanks for the opportunity of coming on board. Yeah, it's interesting that it's loved on Are You OK Day, and I ask if everybody's okay because that's really important. So our journey in tourism started in 2004 when we bought Kangaroo Island Wilderness Tourism. So we knew absolutely nothing about tourism. So we went to every trade show that we could possibly go to and talk to as many people as we could. People like Sean and people working at SATC, that was the way we found our way into the industry. In that journey, we've been through bird flu, swine flu, SARS, 9/11, GFC 1 and 2, and every one of those things had about a 20% impact on our business. And so we had to, the new COVID word is pivot, and so we always had to pivot during those periods. And so we looked at reducing our costs and changing the way we did things. But the one thing we didn't do was we didn't stop marketing, and we always felt that it was really important to keep marketing. Being an ex-farmer, I thought you didn't stop putting super on your paddocks in the bad times, because you knew in the good times that would pay off. And so the same for marketing. And so even when things are tough, you need to keep marketing, keep selling your message, however you do that. And so, and in more recent times, we lost a business, Seascape Lodge. We lost that in an electrical fire, and we lost basically all of our possessions as well as our business and our house. So we had to recover from that and pivot again. And then, of course, we've been hit by bushfires in 2020 on KI. We thought that was a big deal until COVID hit, and so that was a massive impact on our business.
Thanks, Paul. Can I ask, before 204, what were you doing before 2004?
So my life, my history was farming, and so my family had farmed for 170 years, and so we made the difficult decision to sell that farm as the kids weren't interested. And so, and I've been involved, as you know, Sean, and some of the others perhaps don't. I've been very involved in other things. I was chair of Australian Tourism Export Council. I was on your board, Sean, for a while, and been very involved in tourism representation, as I was in agricultural representation before that.
And your current role, Paul, what is your current role, and what sort of interactions are you having with tourism business owners at the moment?
Yeah, look, I was actually transitioning quite happily into retirement. I don't know that my wife was terribly happy about me being comfortable with that, but that was where I was headed. And then I got an opportunity to join Rural Business Support, and Rural Business Support provide small business financial counselling. So it's not advice. We're not advisors. We're not financial advisors. And we provide free advice to small business owners who live outside the metro area, and that's a free advice for 12 months. And so for me, it ticked so many boxes, gave me an opportunity to use the experience I've gained as a small business owner over probably 40 years. And also for me to get back out into the country, because I live in the city. Whilst that's great, I do enjoy getting into the country, and I've got clients on Kangaroo Island, where I'm talking to you from now. And I've also got clients up in the Barossa Valley, and some of those people are in tourism. They don't realise it. They've got a shop front, and the visitor economy has affected their businesses. Some of them have been extremely impacted by COVID. Some of them have really been impacted by bushfires, but that recovery process is now starting. But we work with people that really are running out of options and really looking for some advice. And quite often it's just that third-party view about what you're doing. Like when you're in trauma and in crisis, it's really hard to think clearly. And I know when we were impacted by bushfires and COVID, it was just so tough to get a picture of where we wanted to go. And we had somebody come in and help us out. And that gave us a lot of clarity about how we should move and go forward. And if I can provide that help to people sometimes it's just that little bit of help that gives people hope and gives them hope to go forward rather than sort of throwing their hands in the air and think it's all hopeless, I'm never going to get out of this. Mostly that's not the case. Mostly it's just needing to really focus on what's important and concentrate on that.
So Paul, where do you, in your nearly 20 years in the tourism industry, how do you see the state of play at the moment in terms of just broadly where the industry's at?
Yeah, look, I think you summed it up pretty well. Look, a lot of my clients, and I know the tourism industry people, had got to a point where they thought they were actually slowly transitioning out of the impacts of COVID, and then whack, we've got New South Wales and Victoria shutting again to South Australia. And I think for a lot of people, it's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I know I've got some clients who are in serious trouble. And unless we can negotiate a successful outcome to that over the next couple of weeks, that's going to be the end of their business involvement. So, I think, you're right. I think it'll be positive when those borders open up and when international comes back, maybe in the second half of next year. Then those people that have been able to pivot and survive during this COVID period will be the ones that will do extremely well because they've been able to manage to keep their business going through that period and will really be able to cash in when things, when the impacts of COVID are less.
Thanks, Paul. So in terms of what are you seeing in without obviously disclosing any individuals, but what are you seeing in the businesses that you're talking to? Obviously, you're talking to some tourism people in regional areas that are under stress. What are you seeing at the moment?
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed just in the last couple of weeks has been a shift of, the banks were probably being less understanding until 2 or 3 weeks ago. And now my conversation I've had with a couple of financiers is they don't want us to close businesses. They understand that they're under extreme stress. That stress is not their own fault. People I'm talking about are good business operators through no fault of their own have been impacted by the closures of New South Wales and Victoria. And so those financial institutions I'm talking to are saying, look, we want to get a successful outcome to this. There is no point in us foreclosing on these people. That's not going to achieve an outcome for anybody. So I've just noticed, that there's just been a little bit of a trend away from aggressive behaviour. They're actually being more conciliatory because, nobody saw this coming. We don't know when New South Wales, Victoria are going to open up again. Even if they relax their restrictions, that doesn't mean South Australia is going to let people in from New South Wales. So, we don't know when it's going to open up. And so I'm hoping to extend people's loans for another 6 months, and then hopefully that'll get us through into that summer period. Because unfortunately, those people had a lot of really solid bookings for September, October, and going into November. But then those bookings have walked out the door. I was talking to somebody last night who said in the last week they've had $200,000 worth of bookings walk out the door because of New South Wales and Victoria. So there's nothing you can do about that.
What are the other pressures that you're seeing? Obviously, banks. What are the other pressure points that individual businesses are facing at the moment that you're seeing?
I'm seeing some issues with landlords where people haven't been able to pay their rent for 6, 7, 8 months, and the landlords, if you look at it from their point of view, they've got bank commitments, they've got financial commitments as well, and so they've been really understanding that there's going to come a point where there has to be some payment of that rent. Otherwise, they'll have no choice but to shut the door on people. And I don't blame the landlord because, as I said, they've got pressure coming at them from the banks. The person that owes the rent, it's not their fault either because they've been impacted by COVID. but eventually you have to come to a resolution. And sometimes you just have to focus on getting that part of it done. And so the person I'm talking about has got a really good vision for the future, really good vision for their future of their business. They've got all that planned out. But unless they overcome this in the next 2 to 3 weeks, that actually doesn't matter. So sometimes you just need to draw back and focus on what's really important. Just get that box ticked, park that to the side, get it out of the road, and then move on to the next thing.
Thanks, Paul. So obviously you're going in there, you're helping people get clarity that they otherwise don't have due to the stresses that they're under in terms of decisions they need to be making in their business to help them move forward. What are you seeing on a personal level in terms of people's mental health and well-being? And obviously this isn't an area that you directly deal in, but obviously these people are very challenged in terms of their own mental health. What referral or what support or what suggestions do you give them in that space?
Yeah, look, I'm no expert on mental health. My first solo appointment was quite challenging because she said, I'm okay, but my husband and my son have both been suicidal. So she said, we've got help for that now, so that's okay. So that was a really tough one to walk into, but just really emphasised to me how hard it is for people to cope with this situation. And they were in a situation that was not their own doing, but they were under extreme financial pressure. And so they'd sought help. And that's the first thing that we're taught, that if we see somebody that's got an issue and we can identify the behaviours, then we say, have you seen your GP? And that's the first thing we say to them. Have you seen your GP? There's an issue here. You need to deal with the issue, but that's got to be your choice, and your first starting point is to go and see a GP. Look, my own personal experience is when you're exhausted, you're under stress, you need to go and do something else, and a lot of that exhaustion comes from that stress, so you need to find a stress reliever. I know when I was working with Wilderness Tours and Seascape, I was probably working 60 to 70 hours a week. And I realised I needed a hobby. And so I took up triathlon. Now, that's not going to suit everybody, but it got me out of the house. It gave me something different to do, and was actually, until I got too intense about triathlon, it actually served the purpose. My wife actually reminded me I was getting too intense about triathlon. It wasn't a stress reliever, it was creating stress. But you just need to find something outside, and also and ask for help. Like, don't be frightened to ask for help. And so whether that's financial counselling, whether that's mental health counselling, look, there shouldn't be any stigma attached to it. I think people should be proud of seeking help. Kangaroo Island's experience has taught us that it's now acceptable to ask somebody if they're okay, and it's also acceptable to say, no, I'm not. And then it's acceptable to go out and go and see a psychologist, or to get somebody outside to look at the finances of your business. You shouldn't be embarrassed about that. The embarrassing thing probably is not doing anything. It's just being too stressed. Sometimes it's really so hard to think about that because you're so stressed. But yeah, look, certainly, as I said, the bushfire experience of Kangaroo Island has taught us that people need help, and you should go and get that help. Look, it used to be embarrassing to go and see a psychologist. Doesn't mean you're going crazy. It just you need fine tuning, and quite often it is that. Like, it's just fine tuning. You're not totally out of control. It's like getting an injury fixed. If you're a runner, you get that injury fixed so that you can continue doing the things that you love doing. And so you might be suffering from mild depression or anxiety, and so you just go and speak to somebody about that, and just talk it over, and doesn't take very long to get a clear path in front of you, and you shouldn't be embarrassed about that.
Thanks, Paul. That's really great. I'll throw it open. I've got a couple of questions this end, but conscious of time. Any questions or comments that people would like to raise? Please come off mic and you'll be heard. Okay, Peter.
Sorry, Sean, I was a bit slower coming off mic. I'm interested, Paul, in the strategy that you use when you're talking to the banks.
It's just an open conversation, and it's not an aggressive behaviour by anybody. And so it's been calm and rational and stating the case about why my client is in the position they're in, and explain that they are, these are people that pre-COVID were actually running a very good business, and through no fault of their own, they've got themselves into this position. So it's explain to them that they're actually a good business manager, good business operator, and all we really need here is an extension of time. These people don't want to default on their loans any more than the bank don't want them to either. And really, the bank understand, without me actually talking to them about it, they don't want to close anybody up. That's not what they do. And most of the banks, in fact, all of them now, all of the financial institutions have hardship areas. So they have a specialised group within their bank. So you get through to those people, and they're used to having those conversations, so they understand it.
And Paul, just a supplementary to that, do you see different responses from different institutions, or is it pretty much everyone's pretty good at the moment?
Yeah, I haven't had
to the fact that there is a timing issue as well, that things have shifted in the last few weeks compared to what they were 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah, like my view, I've only been in this role 5 or 6 weeks, or 6, 7 weeks now, but in that early stages, the banks were actually starting to get a little bit more aggressive, and now they're not. And so so I say, I guess it's worth restating, they don't want to close anybody up, because that's no good for their shareholders or their loan portfolio or anything. There's no point in that. And so, but they have to come to a solution that's going to help everybody out. And so, you have to provide cash flows, you adjust the cash flows, you have to do all of that stuff, but you have to you have to join a partner. You have to do everything they want you to do. That's part of the deal. But I'm pretty confident if you provide all of that information, then it'll be fine.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Peter, did you have a question? Peter Carlin?
Yeah, it's really about, this is a huge stress on communities and businesses. And traditionally, communities have supported each other. You've normally got friends and mentors. What's been the impact in your observation on that whole business of people being supportive or being less supportive, Paul?
Look, the trauma I lived through and everybody else did on Kangaroo Island through that bushfire period, everybody was just so supportive. It was a community coming together for the very best of reasons. It was people acknowledging their friends were in trouble, both financially and mentally, suffering severe stress. So some of those people were out fighting fires for 20, 30 days straight with 3 or 4 hours sleep a night. You can imagine the impact on that. And so everybody just sort of helped out. I helped a guy by helping him drink a bottle of scotch one night, and that was him being able to tell his story and really live that story. And so that's what people did. Don't be frightened to tell the story. If you've got something that's impacting you, tell it over and over again if you need to, because the more you do that, more express the way you're feeling about what's impacting you, the better off you're going to be. That's my observation. I'm no mental health expert, but that certainly worked for me, and I know it's worked for some of my friends.
Thanks, Paul. One final question, conscious of time, unless anyone else wants to come off mic, please feel free to do so. We had a couple of questions come in before the session. One of them was about operator exhaustion. You've touched on it, but how do you manage exhaustion?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one.
And I reckon your estimate of 60 to 70 hours a week was a bit underdone as well, by the way.
Yeah, exhaustion is a hard one because one of the things you see with businesses that are in trouble is people say, my business is in trouble, I need to work harder. And quite often that's not the solution. And that's probably the time where you actually need to step back and take a helicopter view of your business. And it's really, really useful to have somebody to help you do that. And so working harder is not always the right answer. It just leads to more exhaustion. The exhaustion for me, the hardest bit about exhaustion is stress. And so stress will make you tired. And so if you can do something to help alleviate that stress, either by getting counselling or some external help, that's the best way. And look, go for a walk on the beach, take your dog for a walk, just get away from where you are. And that's constantly, in my new role, my employers are very conscious about making sure that we're up to being able to do our job. Because if we become too mentally exhausted with our clients, we're not going to be able to help them. And so they're constantly saying, like, go for a walk with your dog, get out of the building. Yeah. So that's some of the triggers to do it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I'm conscious we've now reached our time limit. I'll really appreciate people's questions, really appreciate those people that are attending today. We've recorded this session, so we'll post that online, and I'm sure there'll be many other downloads. Paul, thank you very much for being candid about your experience, and both as a small business owner and now in your current role as a business counsellor. I think this is such a critical issue for all of us. I really like your advice about the GP thing, or your comment about that. It doesn't have to be, it's just go see your GP and have a chat. I think that's really good advice for people that you might be a bit concerned about, or you think that need some support. So I'll conclude today's session. Is there any final comment from you, Paul?
No, thanks for the opportunity, Sean. And, the whole point of me wanting to do this is to be able to reach out to people. And if those people on board can reach out to other people, and, if we can help down the track, if I can help down the track, that's why I want to be involved. So, and good luck to everybody. It's going to be a tough couple of months, but if we can get through this 2 or 3 months, then I'm sure things are going to get better.
Thanks very much, Paul. Thanks very much, everyone, for being a part of today's session. Look forward to seeing you all online soon. Have a great day.
Cheers. See you later.